These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us today here on Market Journal. From high atop the Colorado Convention Center in downtown Denver, I'm Bryce Duskin. The Rocky Mountains behind me made the perfect backdrop for the 2025 edition of the Commodity Classic event, which took place this week. More than 11,000 farmers and ag professionals have gathered under one roof to discuss some policy issues that various commodity groups are taking up in the next year, as well as kick the tires on some new iron during their trade show. Coming up on this week's broadcast, of course, we'll talk weather and the markets, also give you a sneak peek of some of the action here at Commodity Classic. As we begin today's show, making news was the new Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, as she spoke to media, as well as the attendees of Commodity Classic to kick off this big event.
This is my fifth state, by the way.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins says the U.S. farm economy is in dire straits, possibly the worst shape in a century. At Commodity Classic, Rollins highlighted several challenges facing farmers.
I mean, how do any of our farmers make any money when the cost of inputs go up 30%, your trade deficit increases $49 billion now, and then you have a whole host of regulations that have been layered on over and over and over again. So there are a lot of factors. We are attacking it from all sides, putting together the plan that can hopefully begin to roll that back. I am planning to very aggressively, with President Trump's permission, go out into the world and look to expand our markets and also make capital easier, especially for our younger farmers, as we begin to build, hopefully, the next generation of our leaders in agriculture.
Rollins told the crowd in Denver that she is pushing to get billions in farm aid approved by Congress back in December out to producers quickly. Of the $30 billion as part of the aid package, $10 billion will go directly to farmers. Industry estimates for those direct payments include $43.80 per acre for corn, $30.61 per acre for soybeans, and $31.80 per acre for wheat. Rollins said that farmers with data on file will receive a pre-filled out form to sign, while those without data will need to submit information manually through their local FSA office. Now, during a press conference, I asked Rollins about the USDA employees who lost their jobs as part of the Department of Government Efficiency's budget cuts. In Nebraska, reports indicate that up to 17 employees were laid off from the U.S. Meat Animal Research Center in Clay Center. Here's what Rollins had to say about whether these cuts will be reviewed.
I have been very transparent in this. This is an extremely aggressive effort that I fully support, but in being so aggressive, there will be mistakes made. And there have been mistakes made. I think in the first tranche, we let go, as part of those cuts, some of the avian flu experts, and immediately Kaylee brought them back and have done that. I was down at the Borlaug Institute in College Station on Friday looking at all of their great researchers, and the three scientists that greeted me, some of the world's most renowned agriculture researchers that the Borlaug Institute and Texas A&M had recruited, were also given the pink slip. But within a few days or a week, they too were brought back. So that is, I think, a really important part of this, is we're moving at Trump speed, that there will be some mistakes made, and that we will fully take responsibility for it and recognize it when that happens.
The new Ag Secretary making some news as she spoke to the media and the guests here at Commodity Classic. Well, up next, lots of business happens inside the halls of the Convention Center, wherever Commodity Classic is being held, of course, this year here in Denver. We wanted to catch up and hear from the Nebraska perspective on some of the policy issues, in particular that the corn growers are facing. So we caught up with Michael Dibburn. He is the president of the Nebraska Corn Growers Association. Well, here at the Big Commodity Classic, there's a lot of things to see and do. As you see behind us, the trade show is underway. Also some business, though, to attend to. Joining us now is Michael Dibbert. He is the president of the Nebraska Corn Growers Association. As you share some of the insights that you've gleaned from those meetings over the past week or so, talk about the business aspect of this convention.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bryce. You know, we use this Commodity Classic get together to not only bring farm equipment manufacturers and other businesses in the ag industry together, but also to conduct business of the Corn Growers Association and create some policy for our policy book and work on things just to increase corn grind and move corn forward.
Of course, you bring the Nebraska perspective forward. Any particular resolutions or topics that were discussed that are important to Nebraska corn growers?
Yeah, you know, one of them that was a big one was talking about setting some policy or action items for our risk management team and improving the beginning farmer and rancher loan program. We believe that the loan rates of that have not been able to keep up with current land prices, increases in current land prices, and that it's really just becoming unfortunate another hurdle for new beginning farmers and ranchers to break into the ag sector and start farming without having already a lot of capital to do that. So working on creating some action items to say, hey, we need to either look at increasing those limits or just improve the program all around.
Well, here on the trade show floor, seeing lots of people walking around with little pins that say E15 year-round. Continue to beat the drum year after year, and Congress has reintroduced a bill, I understand, to try to make that possible. Nebraska delegation involved again?
Absolutely. You know, we were so close to getting E15 into law, availability into law in the last CR back in December. Unfortunately, it got pulled out, but we believe it did generate some momentum and buzz around it that we're going to try and really push it again. And so we're thankful for Senator Fisher in the Senate and Senator Smith in the House to work with some of their counterparts across the aisle even to reintroduce that E15 bill to make it available nationwide. You know, it's a no cost, doesn't cost the government anything more. We're just wanting it to be able to be available to everyone from coast to coast.
Some estimates show if that was available year-round nationwide, estimates show 5 to 7 billion gallons increase.
Yeah.
Obviously, that use a lot more corn. A big issue for Nebraska, the second largest producer of ethanol in the country.
Absolutely. You know, right now that they produce in the ballpark of that 15 to 16 billion gallons. So if you put that in perspective with an additional 5 to 7 billion gallons, that's a lot of corn grind. And, you know, we believe us corn farmers are only going to get better at growing corn. Genetics are going to get better, so we got to find a place for that corn to go. And you know, ethanol is a great place for it to go. So definitely pushing hard on that. You know, we're appreciative of the waivers for the Midwest states to allow sales of E15 use year-round, but you know, we really need to get into the law so that the whole country can utilize it.
Michael, great to visit with you here at Commodity Classic.
Thank you, Bryce.
Good to hear from the folks from Nebraska Corn on their issues that they're talking about here at Commodity Classic. We go from corn to soybeans now as Ann Meese, a member of the Nebraska Soybean Board, is joining us. And in Nebraska, 3 out of every 5 rows of soybeans ends up being exported. I know you're very passionate about this kind of work, so increasing exports of soybeans ultimately, hopefully, will increase the profitability of Nebraska soybean farmers. To that point, you're working on a project here at Commodity Classic. It's called the Soy Excellence Center right there on your shirt. What can you share with us about that?
Absolutely. So the Soy Excellence Centers has developed as a subset of U.S. Soy Export Council, who's constantly working worldwide to open up markets for our soy in this world market. The concept of Soy Excellence Centers is to provide an educational platform to those mid to level workers in the industry that are working and utilizing the soybeans that grow here right on our farm here in Nebraska. So examples of this educational platform that we're offering, our most popular is the poultry course. And then the feed mill course, a swine course has been developed. And what we're doing is we're offering free education to the workers in this industry in throughout these centers in the world. They're not actually physical centers because we found that an online educational platform is the most cost-effective and effective way to deliver these courses.
Of course, we're talking about exports, so this is not in the U.S. Give us an example of a location or two where some of this education would be served.
Right. We originally started in Egypt, where the aquaculture market is very prevalent. So that course was developed for aquaculture. We have poultry is very popular in South America and in Southeast Asia, and the feed mill course goes throughout. So Nigeria is an emerging market that we've are offering this education. These people are so grateful for this education. I was able to travel to Nigeria, hand out the certificates to the graduates of this course. So the funders met the trainees. The handshakes, the hugs, the pictures. It was something I just can't describe. People talked about how it's really impacting their lives, improving their lives. And now we are going to start really gearing up for a Soy Excellence Center in India. We believe that is a very large potential market. And I'll be traveling to India in early April to actually witness some of the graduates there and what the course is impacting there in India.
Just next month you'll be traveling there.
Yes.
So keep us posted on your travel, and hope the Soy Excellence Centers get up and running. Sounds like a neat project that you all are working on. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Great to visit with Ann Meese here at Commodity Classic. Learn about some of the work happening behind the scenes as they shape the future of the soybean industry. Well, up next, let's check in on markets. And joining us is a special guest this week here on Market Journal from the Terrain team is Matt Clark. As Matt, we visit about kind of the long-term prospects and the forecast of what's going to be happening in the agriculture sector, in particular grains, as you and I are visiting today. Timely topic with Commodity Classic. And gosh, over the years, it seems like we continue to talk about U.S. agriculture meeting the growing population, but a recent report that you and your team penned shows that could soon change.
Yeah, so one of the key focuses of Terrain is thinking about that 5 to 30 year outlook, which I know it feels a long ways away, but let's talk about it a bit. You made a really good point that if you start back maybe in the 1990s forward, we've talked about feeding the world, and exports have been great for U.S. ag, and that's come alongside a growing population. And for a long time, we talked about how population would continue to grow throughout the 21st century. We might reach that 12, 13 billion people number. The research at Terrain indicates that we may not be that far away from peak population. In fact, our research says, hey, it may be more like 2065, which again, it's not that far away. If you think about a 30-year land note today, that's going to bump up pretty close. If you think about a new farmer today, hopefully they're still farming in 2065. So some changes we think coming forward is really going to be that demographic piece for U.S. ag.
What could that mean for the grain markets, or in particular the grain commodities, as you've looked into this?
Yeah, I think what I'd really want to emphasize with farmers is it doesn't mean it's negative, it doesn't mean it's bad, it doesn't mean that exports are going to go down. If you think about countries such as Japan, South Korea, China, they've already experienced peak population. Yet, if you think about specifically Japan and South Korea, they've been great export partners, even in the face of that. So we have a runway here where I don't think exports go down because of population. But if you go 10 years out from now, more than 60% of our soybeans are currently going to countries that will be in decline. So how do we start to reposition that current portfolio? How do we think about trying to get into new markets that are growing? Most of the markets that we aren't in today, if you think about Africa and India, there's a lot of struggles getting in there. There is some value though in long-term growth. Now in the longer phase, as all of those countries start to experience population decline, there's a real question of how do we start producing higher value products? How do we take that similar route to corn that 30 plus years ago they exported mostly bulk. Today they export a lot of the ethanols, a lot of the oils, a lot of the starches, a lot of the syrups. How do we do that with some of our other commodities to really gain that value here and export high value products?
It's going to paint the picture you're laying out. In particular, let's maybe talk about soybeans, because you outlined where corn is at the moment. What do you see for opportunities for soybeans?
I think when I listen to the American Soybean Association and soybean export groups, I hear a lot of what I heard from corn 20 plus years ago of, hey, why don't we crush that value here? Why don't we build that demand here so we have domestic outlooks, but also start to export some of those high value products, whether that's a biodiesel, whether that's a meal, whether that's the soy oil. Remains to be seen exactly what part of that will take off first, but I see a lot of parallels there for growing that demand long term.
How about for wheat?
Wheat's a little bit more tough. right? So almost, not all, but a very large percentage of our exports in wheat are bulk.
Yeah.
Wheat also faces the problem of most other countries can grow wheat, and so sometimes they don't have the comparative or absolute advantage in the market. There again, they've got to start thinking about how do we grow some of those markets that are growing. So whether that is in Africa specifically, you've seen wheat put a big emphasis on that. How do we grow that to capture their population increase, while at the same time thinking about some of those higher value products that we put in. Maybe it's the high protein stuff. Maybe it's more into the doughs and the mixes that only we can do. It's going to be a little bit of a different runway for wheat than it will be for soybeans, certainly.
So based on what I've heard you talk about, it's not like you're saying you need to stop growing X, Y, or commodity on your farm, but instead think about bigger picture, the industry and what they're exporting. Is that a fair way to look at it?
That's a great way to. It's not doom and gloom. If you and I were to compare how we farmed 30 years ago to today, we'd say, oh my gosh, it's way different. Same is going to be true 30 years from now. It's going to look way different. How do we prepare now to make sure that we hit those targets for long-term success? Some of that's going to be finding new export markets. A lot of it's going to be rethinking our product mix. A lot of it's going to be rethinking how do we position today to meet that future demand. And I think our trade associations are working on that.
Yep.
You certainly hear it in the undertones, and I think for the farmer, you're going to hear more and more about that over the next 12 to 14, 24 months out.
So going to get Matt's thoughts there as we look big picture on what could happen in the future when it comes to the grain markets. Well, up next here at Commodity Classic, we're visiting with a familiar face here on Market Journal. Jackson Stansell of Sentinel Fertigation is joining us. And Jackson, we followed you over the years as you had developed this product out of the University of Nebraska with some of your studies there. You all work to deliver nitrogen fertilizer right on time to help avoid farmers overusing fertilizer. They don't want to. It costs them a lot of money. And you help provide some data through satellite imagery, right?
That's right.
To avoid doing that. How do you do so?
So, Bryce, what we do is we ask our farmers to put in high and low check plots in the field. We call them collectively Sentinel plots. We use these Sentinel plots to calibrate every satellite image that comes into our program. We also use it to calibrate a back-end crop and soil nitrogen dynamics model. We track nitrogen sufficiency over the course of the season. When we see that sufficiency is dropping, we encourage a farmer to make an additional nitrogen application. And ultimately, it results in very profitable outcomes. We're seeing about $24 per acre improvement in profitability, and it results in more efficient outcomes as well. We're seeing consistently over 20% improvement in nitrogen use efficiency.
This is our Conservation Corner segment here on Market Journal. And nitrogen, managing nitrogen and your use is a matter of conservation, especially in Nebraska, where we have had some issues with that in the past. Talk about how your product is addressing that.
Absolutely. Groundwater quality is a huge issue in Nebraska, and even if you look nationwide, groundwater quality is a big deal, as is surface water quality. Ultimately, what we believe is if you are making in-season applications and applying the right amount of nitrogen at the right time for the crop, you're minimizing the amount of nitrogen that is stored in the soil and it's exposed to the risk of leaching or running off of the field. And so if you're able to do that, you can really possibly reduce your nitrogen rate, but at the very least mitigate your leaching risk and help keep those concentrations of nitrate that can have human health impacts low within the groundwater and surface water.
One of the things we want to highlight today is that you are still signing up growers for 2025. What does that process look like?
So if you're a grower that's interested in using this technology to benefit your profitability and your efficiency, what I would highly encourage you to do is, number one, go to our website. We have a form where you can contact us and we can kind of talk to you more about how that might look in your operation. And two, look locally for your certified service provider from our Century Network. We do have agronomists, ag retailers, independent crop consultants throughout the state.
Nebraska had a program, I know it's closed at this point, but the Nitrogen Reduction Act that helps offset some of these funds, correct?
Absolutely. The Nebraska Nitrogen Reduction Incentive Act provides between $10 and $15 per acre, depending on which phase area that you're in for nitrogen management in the state. Applications closed this past year on January 15th, but they will be reopening as we head into the next year. So if this is something that you're considering, I would highly encourage you to apply. Technology fits the program quite well.
Curious your thoughts as you've worked with largely Nebraska farmers at this point, their reaction to seeing the amount of money they can save, but also they don't have to apply as much fertilizer as once thought. What kind of feedback do you hear?
Our farmers love it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of shocking the first year that you go through the program, right? You kind of have to rethink how you think about nitrogen management. There's no yield goal, there's no soil sampling that you have to do. So it is really a big paradigm shift. But I think once farmers see that they can reduce a little bit, it kind of encourages them to start saying, okay, what else do I need to take a look at? How much farther can I go? And really, what does optimizing my nitrogen look like in my operation? We've seen some really big numbers in terms of profitability improvements. And I think the big thing here is, conservation and profitability really don't have to be mutually exclusive. They're really collectively a win-win solution for the grower, and that's really what we're trying to achieve at Sentinel.
You've been taking that message nationwide here at Commodity Classic. Appreciate you joining us here, Jackson, as we visit with you here on the trade show floor. And up next here on Market Journal, it's our chance to catch up with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt as we talk about all things weather. Eric, this week I understand you prepared a both spring and summer outlook. I hope that outlook includes lots of moisture, because we certainly need it across the Cornhusker State. What are you seeing?
Well, thanks, Bryce. I do indeed have a seasonal outlook today. I do want to start by talking about next week, just real quick. We are going to be dominating upper-level ridging at the start of this next week. That's going to be an ample sunshine, lighter wind speeds, and temperatures getting in the 60s and maybe even the 70s for a good portion of the state on Monday and Tuesday. Probably cooling off slightly Wednesday, Thursday. And by the end of the week, we're going to be turning our attention toward a trough moving into the southern plains. And that right now looks to bring a pretty good chance of rain for the entire state, with the possibility of getting some snow across portions of the Sandhills and the Panhandle. Now, again, it's a little too early to say exactly how this will shake out, but right now there is a pretty good chance of a lot of the state picking up at least a half inch of rain out of this. This will be good news because the ground will certainly hold it. In terms of the CPC, they're also kind of bullish on precipitation across the state, certainly in the western United States, drier to our south. They are favoring warmer than average conditions in the eastern United States, colder in the west of the troughing. I do think these above average temperatures might be just a little bit on the generous side during portions of this period. Okay, now getting the seasonal outlook. Right now we are currently still in La Nina, with the cold sea surface temperatures being primarily focused here in the central Pacific. We call this a Modoki La Nina. But we have noticed these sea surface temperatures coming back up here across the eastern side of the Pacific Basin, with the upwelling decreasing. And we are expected to go back into neutral conditions here later this spring, and we should be remaining in neutral conditions through the summer. There is still some chance we could be back in La Nina or stay in La Nina through the summer. There's even a slighter chance that we could be in an El Nino by the time we get into the fall. The seasonal forecast in terms of temperature looks pretty similar to what we would see in the springs after La Nina. That's warm south and east and cooler toward the northwest, where we tend to have more troughing. And if we take a look at the analogs that I think are probably the most useful for this year, we do tend to see cooler temperatures across the Pacific Northwest, and including portions of western Nebraska, warm to our south and to our east as a general rule. Really what this means for us is we do have a lot of ups and downs. We've already seen quite a few swings here across this portion of the country in recent weeks, and I think that's a trend that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. The CPC is showing drier than average favor across pretty much the western three-quarters of the state, and particularly across the southern portion of the high plains and the southwest. I think a lot of this is going to determine how much southwest flow we get this spring. If we can get some deeper troughs coming into the west, rolling out here in the central plains, I do think we stand a chance of picking up some very beneficial moisture across the central plains and western Corn Belt. If we don't have that southwest flow, I do think there's still a chance that eastern Nebraska could do okay, but most of the rest of the state would miss out on good moisture in the next couple of months. Seasonal drought outlook shows basically the entire state staying in drought or going into drought as we head through the end of May. And the CPC's outlook for the summer precipitation is not necessarily great news for a lot of us, showing drier than average favored. Taking a look at analogs, though, I do think this year does have some possibility to be a bit more like 2021. That also was dry, kind of like what the CPC showed. However, that was not catastrophically dry, and we had some decent moisture that spring going in, so the dryness at times that summer wasn't quite as much of an issue as it was in some recent years. CPC is also favoring warmer than average across the entire western United States. That leads me to think that they are definitely favoring western ridges, which is definitely something that I have been seeing. And I do think that if that comes to fruition, that would keep the heat more to the west, and I think that would allow some cooler fronts to come down and give us some chances of precipitation. And this is the 2025 winter temperature precipitation roundup. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thank you very much for that update, Eric. We do appreciate your outlook on both the spring and summer. Back here in Denver, Colorado for Commodity Classic. There's a lot of new iron sitting as part of the trade show, where farmers are getting a sneak peek at some of the things that they can purchase here in the year ahead. The folks from CLAAS, headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, for their U.S. location, were here, and they were kind enough to spend a few moments with us to showcase their LEXION combine. Here at Commodity Classic, there's lots of big machinery like the LEXION combine you see behind us right now. Jeff from CLAAS, kind enough to join us and tell us about the machine that you guys brought straight from Omaha, Nebraska here to Denver, Colorado. Tell us about this machine.
Well, the one behind us, this is the 8600. This is our Class 8, which is our volume selling combine in North America. This particular one is equipped with the TerraTrack. You can also get it in with wheels, singles or duals as well. It's rated up to 506 6 horsepower. It's got a 510 bushel grain tank with a 5.1 bushel per second unload rate, and it can handle pretty much any header that we've got in our lineup, all the way up to 16-row chopping corn head or up to a 45 or 50-foot flex draper.
Let's talk about the tracks this machine has on right now. These have become increasingly popular, running tracks on your combine. A lot of people prefer that.
Well, the first thing is how much lower ground pressure it puts on the ground, so it allows you to get into those more challenging ground conditions, softer, and lets you get that perishable crop out of the field in a more timely fashion. The other reason folks like this too is because of its ride quality. This particular track design is fully suspended, so it adapts to the changing terrain so that the operator is not jarred and has to suffer through rough terrain, especially irrigation tracks. They're out in the field, so it makes the harvest much smoother, especially going down the road. It's not going to bounce going down the road either at 25 mile an hour.
Made in Omaha, Nebraska. A lot of the parts are sourced in North America. Talk about that.
That's right. Over 50% on average are sourced in North America, and a lot of them are sourced within Nebraska through such companies as TMCO, Chief Industries, Metalworks. We've been building combines now in Omaha, Nebraska for close to 25 years now.
Seems to be more and more of the LEXION machines being run, as I see it, throughout the state of Nebraska. I'm sure well beyond that. Why do farmers choose to switch brands?
Well, one of the reasons why they choose to go with LEXION combines is their productivity, acres per hour. On average, LEXION combines will do 30 to 35% more on average than their nearest competitors, and what enables that is our unique threshing system that we've got inside the combine that allows it to sort through very tough, challenging conditions, to smooth out harvest, make threshing a lot more efficiently, to be able to tackle those tougher conditions and maintain a more consistent ground speed, slightly higher ground speed, of course, to get harvest done in a more timely fashion.
Okay, well, as people are getting ready for the growing season, we'll look forward to fall and harvest. If somebody wants to demo, is that something you guys do for them to be able to try it out?
Absolutely. Just get in touch with your local CLAAS dealer. The best way to get a hold of us is to just go to our website, claas.com.
Jeff, appreciate the information. Thanks for joining us here in Denver, Colorado.
No problem. Thank you.
Always fun to see some of the new equipment that's on display here at Commodity Classic. Well, that's about all the time we have for this week's show. Do want to remind you that we clip each of our stories up as an individual piece, and you can find those over on the Market Journal YouTube page. We'll be back in Nebraska and in the studio for next week's show. Hope you'll join us then. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.